Taiwan, I'm Joyce here in Taipei with the latest news. Lawmakers have just finished voting on who will lead Taiwan's legislature for the next 4 years. Our reporter Louise Watt is live for us outside the legislative building following this crucial vote. Louise, what's the latest?
Kuo-yu, the KMT pick for Speaker, has been elected as head of the legislature. Now, just a few moments ago, he came out on the steps behind me and he said he hopes that this will mean the parties can now work together. There's not a lot of chance of that happening, given that historically the two main parties have had a lot of disagreements. He also thanked his predecessor, Si-kun of the DPP, for his role as Speaker over the past 8 years. Yo just lost out to Han, and also Huang Shanshan of the third party, the Taiwan People's Party, also lost out today.
So it's official, Han has secured enough votes to become Speaker. Louise, what do we know about him?
Kuo-yu ran for the presidency in 2020 and he lost badly to Tseng. He's also been the mayor of Kaohsiung City, but he was recalled by voters who felt that he abandoned the city. While he was mayor, he traveled to China and he met with officials from the Chinese Communist Party. Now that raises the question of what will his priority be as Speaker? Will he try to reach out to China, or will he follow in the steps of Si-kun and use the role to boost Taiwan's diplomacy with Western nations and also raise Taiwan's profile on the international stage?
Thank you, Louise. That was Louise Watt reporting live from outside Taiwan's legislature. We'll have more on the results of the vote later. The military says 33 Chinese warplanes were spotted around the country on Thursday, the most recorded this year. Among that group, 14 aircraft breached Taiwan's Air Defense Identification Zone, or ADIZ. This is an area that is used for defensive purposes and not the country's airspace. China sends military aircraft and warships around Taiwan to test the country's defenses. Taiwan's military says it is monitoring the situation. Those incursions come as Taiwan wraps up 2 days of military exercises around the country. Our reporter Jaime Ocon spoke to Kelly Greco, a security analyst in Washington, D.C., to find out how useful these drills are.
So Taiwan's military has just wrapped up these exercises ahead of the Lunar New Year. And one of the first drills involved these C-130 airplanes, these really big transport aircraft that play a huge role in providing logistics for Taiwan. But in the event of a conflict, how applicable is this kind of drill?
The first red flag I have there is what airfields do they believe they're going to be using in wartime that will not be destroyed by Chinese missiles to be able to move material that way? To me, that's just not going to be a viable way to do it. So they need to be thinking about other ways to do that, whether that's, having convoys and thinking about how to create decoys in terms of vehicles on the ground. Ukraine has been quite successful at that, about using decoys in that way. But I think what's really important is to practice in these exercises things that are actually going to be viable in wartime. And using C-130s, for example, is something that doesn't strike me as particularly viable.
Another exercise that Taiwan conducted simulated how it would plant sea mines in the ocean in the Taiwan Strait. How applicable is that kind of drill in the sense of pushing more towards that asymmetric strategy?
One of the things that is useful about sea mines is they're relatively cheap. And, you can deploy them in different ways, including, you easily deploy them just from ships themselves. And it doesn't have to be even a military vessel. If you have training, you can train civilian fishermen how to, put these over. But one of the things that's really useful about sea mines is that they can really delay an adversary because China has the same problem that the United States would have in a mining area, where you have to clear the mines, or you have to at least clear a portion of them so your vessels can get through. And the reality is there's not an easy way to do that really quickly. It simply takes time. But time is the one thing that Taiwan is going to want to try to create if it finds itself in a conflict.
And I just want to get your thoughts on this, Kelly, in the sense of the direction that Taiwan is going in terms of these military exercises. Is this more for show, or are these actually applicable if a conflict were to happen?
Well, I think what I would say is, first of all, is that logistics is incredibly important in war. And there's a tendency sometimes to focus on the shiny objects, the things that shoot, and the new technology and what it can do. But none of that matters if you don't keep weapons armed with ammunition, you don't keep soldiers fed. That stuff doesn't really matter. And we can see that in the Ukraine war. One of the real advantages Ukraine has had relative to Russia is that they've been much better at logistics. Logistics has been a major weakness for the Russians. So it's really fundamental to war, even if it's not the most sexy of topics. And I think exercising that, that's the closest you can get to an actual conflict situation without conflict, but practicing that, because there's so much you learn by actually trying to do that.
That was Kelly Greco, a security analyst from the Stimson Center, speaking to our reporter, Jaime Ocon. Taiwan's economy grew at the slowest rate in 14 years in 2023. The government estimates GDP grew around 1.4% last year, down from nearly 2.6% in 2022. Officials say the drop was caused by weak investment on the part of government and private companies and fewer exports. Taiwan is an export-oriented economy. Authorities are forecasting better growth this year at over 3%. The mayor of Kumamoto, Japan, is visiting Taiwan ahead of the opening of a TSMC fab in the prefecture this month. Onishi Kazufumi visited Tainan and Kaohsiung, two cities with TSMC plants. The Taiwanese firm makes most of the world's most advanced chips and is an influential force in the global supply chain and economy. It has recently expanded into Japan, the US, and Germany. While meeting with officials, Onishi welcomed advice on what the city can do to help the chipmaker.
取り組みをなさっていますので、今回その環境、それから交通、住宅などですね、こういった分野の皆さんからお話を聞かせていただきたいということで。
Myanmar's military has extended a state of emergency one day before the third anniversary of a coup that plunged the country into turmoil. The junta has found itself on the back foot in recent months as it struggles to contain a pro-democracy rebellion that's gaining strength. Rick Lowert reports.
Pro-democracy fighters in central Myanmar battling with military forces. 3 years after the country's generals ousted elected leaders, thousands here have taken up arms to form a resistance. Across the country, pro-democracy militias like this are gaining ground against the junta.
This civil war in Myanmar has become unwinnable for the Myanmar junta. And that means that it's a matter of time before they lose this war. I mean, they're losing troops on a daily basis, no new recruits, no reinforcements, no resupply. So soldiers are not willing to do patrols anymore. They get ambushed and so on. And the upper hand now has gone to the resistance forces.
The junta is still in control of the capital and other major cities. But the elected leaders they ousted are waiting to return to power and build a new federal democracy.
This is once and for all to end the dictatorship in Myanmar, to that the military never come to the politics of the country.
The violence is causing a humanitarian crisis largely overlooked internationally. More than 6,000 civilians have been killed since the coup, and 2.3 million people have been displaced. These numbers could increase as the military loses ground. There are fears the generals would lash out on civilian targets.
Life will be more challenging than before because the more or less likely regime will try to drop bombs to their towns. So there will be more and more civilian casualties.
The balance of power may be shifting here. And for many, a post-military Myanmar finally looks within reach. But until full control is wrestled from the generals, the country's people will continue to pay a high price in their battle for democracy. Alex Chen and Rick Lowert for TaiwanPlus.
China and Russia say they will strengthen their military cooperation. Dong Jun, the newly appointed Chinese defense minister, spoke to his Russian counterpart Sergei Shoigu in a video call on Wednesday. Dong says the two countries will improve their military relations so they can play a bigger role in global security. A Thai court has ordered the country's most popular political party to end its royal reform campaign, ruling it unconstitutional. The Move Forward Party had wanted to change a law that banned insulting Thailand's monarchy, drawing strong criticism from the country's conservatives. The party's former leader, Pitalimjaroenrat, was blocked from becoming prime minister, partially over his party's reformist views. He says his party's goal is to find a consensus among Thai people.
We wanted to confirm that this is not just about me personally. This is not just about our party, but this is about the future. It's about the health of Thai democracy and the political landscape going forward.
Chief executives of social media giants Meta, X, TikTok, Snap, and Discord have faced tough questions about companies' efforts to combat online sexual exploitation at a U.S. Senate hearing. Rosie Greninger has the story.
Called to the US Senate for another hearing, social media executives were confronted with images of children who've been victim to online sexual abuse.
I was sexually exploited on Instagram.
I was sexually exploited on X. The leaders of X, Snap, Meta, TikTok, and Discord faced a 4-hour grilling by US lawmakers about the risk their products pose to young people. As efforts to regulate social media ramp up amid concerns there's not enough being done to keep kids safe online. The senators say these tech executives have failed to protect children from sexual predators on their platforms, with statistics showing sextortion has skyrocketed by 87% since 2019.
You and the companies before us, I know you don't mean it to be so, but you have blood on your hands. You have a product. You have a product that's killing people.
Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg, who runs Facebook and Instagram, was prompted to apologize to families who say their children have suffered or died as a result of social media.
Let me ask you this. There's families of victims here today. Have you apologized to the victims? Would you like to do so now?
I'm sorry for everything that you've all been through. It's terrible. No one should have to go through the things that your families have suffered. And this is why we invested so much and are going to continue doing industry-leading efforts to make sure that no one has to go through the types of things that your families have had to suffer.
At the heart of these modern-day concerns are the lack of legislation to regulate social media companies and the extent of China's access to social media data. TikTok CEO Shou Chu repeatedly questioned about his ties to China and the CCP.
So, you said today, as you often say, that you live in Singapore. Of what nation are you a citizen?
Singapore.
Are you a citizen of any other nation?
No, Senator.
Have you ever applied for Chinese citizenship?
Senator, I served my nation in Singapore. No, I did not.
Have you ever been a member of the Chinese Communist Party?
Senator, I'm Singaporean. No.
While Snap and X both agreed to support a proposed Kids Online Safety Act, TikTok is pledging $3 billion on trust and safety efforts, and Meta is promising to work to prevent online abuse. But despite several of these hearings rallying for online safety, there's still no legislated change, leaving parents and lawmakers frustrated at the seeming lack of urgency to pass meaningful laws to hold platforms accountable. Dolphin Chen and Rosie Greninger for TaiwanPlus.
In breaking news, outgoing legislative speaker Si-kun has just announced he's retiring. Meanwhile, over 1 million people are expected to pass through the country's largest airport over the Lunar New Year holiday. Taoyuan Airport is expecting long queues and is urging travelers to plan ahead and arrive early for their flights. The peak travel period starts on February 7th and runs through the 15th. Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. Finally, get into the Lunar New Year spirit with these lanterns lighting up a temple in Malaysia ahead of the coming Year of the Dragon. I'm Joyce, take care and see you next time.